Good morning, everybody. It was a pleasure listening to the technology segment, seeing my old school student, Juan Vorster, who's always been a genius and never stopped becoming more of a genius. I'm going to talk to you about an FA walks into a bar. Now, if you listen to this, I want you to listen carefully, because if you listen to the story, I'm going to give you 10 principles for success. I'm actually going to teach you the principles coming right out of a book, The Power of Focus by Jack Canfield. So if you're reading emails or something, just listen to the story, because that's going to turn into those 10 principles. So raising the bar is the theme, but let's think about a different bar for a moment. An FA walks into a bar. He does that every night. As he walks into the bar, he squints to focus because he needs to see the dartboard. Now, when he goes over to the dartboard, he stands on his one leg and balances himself and throws the dart. Always a success, bullseye. So he gets high fives from friends all around, and his confidence is raised so much by the fact that he's thrown the bullseye once again, that he walks over to a beautiful, well, depending on the FA, whether it's a female FA or a male FA, but a beautiful person that they'd like to date. And they ask them for a date. Now, you might not know this, but this happens every night. And the FA does it, and eventually the significant other says yes. My question to you is, why do you think the FA walked into the bar? So that's the story. Now, as you listen, listen to this story, I'm going to ask you just some questions on the story, and I hope you remember them, because this story, I see it's 52, so it's taken me 2 minutes to tell the story. So some questions. That FA walks into a bar. When does the FA walk into a bar? If anyone wants to chat in the text, that would be awesome. But if you don't want to chat in the text, I'll pause for a second or two and then give the answer. Every evening, what does he do as he walks into the bar? The first thing, before he goes to the dartboard, he has to, or she has to, adjust the eyes in order to focus. Then they go to the dartboard to throw the dart as they stand on, yes, one leg, so well balanced. And what does the friends do? They give him or her high fives as they enjoy the success, and the FA feels so confident that he or she walks to the attractive person on the other side of the bar and asks them for a date. They do this every night because eventually the person will say yes. So the FA just does it, as Nike says. Why do you think the FA walked into the bar? Right, that's the story twice in 3 minutes. Now, what I'd like you to consider is this story has got 10 lessons which will make you successful. So if you tell yourself this story every morning, or every time you have 2 to 3 minutes, it will remind you of the 10 powerful things that will make you successful as an FA, or if you're a leader in a leadership position, or in any position, as a matter of fact. So I'm going to start with this. So an FA walks into a bar every night. Now, every night means it's a habit. Now, in the book, The Power of Focus, it is said that your habits will determine your future. It's not your past. It's not the things which has happened to you. It's your habits. If I need to lose weight, I need to eat less and run more. That's my habits for the future. So I cannot say my past determines my future or other people determine my future. A huge amount of my future is determined by the habit. So when you tell yourself the story, think about the FA walking to the bar every night. That's a habit. What does the FA do? They squint and focus. Now, there's a crucial part of having that habit. The habit is to focus, to know where you need to go and what you want. You can only do that if you adhere to Stephen Covey's second habit, which is, begin with the end in mind. So how focused are you? So that's point number 2. So every day you wake up, you say, have I completed the right habits? Do I have the right habits? Am I focused? The third one, what does the FA do? Goes to the dartboard. because that's goals, goal setting. You can see the circles of the goals, and so if you don't have goals, you cannot focus. So these things are actually interrelated. And then what does he or she do before throwing the dart? They balance themselves on one leg, boom, and they throw. That's the fourth element that we all need in our lives, is balance. So how balanced are you? Now, many people who don't have goals find it difficult to be balanced because they cannot focus and it doesn't become a habit. You see, all four of those are coming together. Now you've thrown the bullseye, you've achieved the goal, then your friends are happy. So they've high-fived you and you get more confidence. Now, so the high fives are relationships. So we all need good relationships. By the way, relationships are always going up or down. So, sort of when you say absence makes the heart grow fonder, no, it makes the neighbor's heart grow fonder of your spouse or whoever it in other case may be. So the relationships are there, the high fives, the friendships, the people, the customers, which we need to see. If you don't take care of your customers, someone else will. And then you get confidence. And that's number 6. As the BC or the FA or whoever, the manager has now thrown the dart, they've achieved the goal of hitting the bullseye. They're very excited and they're confident, so they're willing to go and ask the other person. Now, confidence is crucial in now. It's something you cannot be taught. It's something you cannot purchase. It's something that you only get by acting confidence, becoming more confident, learning things which makes you more confident. And then obviously they're willing to ask. Asking is such a crucial thing. If you just listen to what we've covered so far. So if I don't have confidence, I'm afraid to ask. If I don't ask, I might mess up relationships. If I don't have good relationships, there will never be balance. If I don't have balance, it's obviously because I don't have goals. I cannot set proper goals. If I don't have proper goals, I cannot focus, and none of these can become a habit. So the person, the FA actually asks the other person, the attractive person, so they've got the confidence, and they've kept on doing this every night because that's consistent persistence. That's what creates success. It's consistent persistence, to be consistently persistent, to keep on going. And obviously, why do they ask? Because they're in the habit of doing it. They just do it. Every night they go and ask. You know that old question about 5 frogs sitting on a rock, one decides to jump, how many remains? 5 remains, because he's decided to jump. He hasn't jumped yet. And then that's execution. And then lastly, why did the BC go to the bar? Why do you do what you do? Why do you, as an FA, a BC, a manager, whatever you do, whatever you're doing right now as a software developer, whatever you do, why do you do it? And if you know why, you'll find that it's easy to create a habit, to be focused, to have goals, to remain in balance, to maintain good relationships, to be confident, ask the right kinds of questions, be consistently persistent, and just do it. So lastly, BC or an FA, sorry, every time I say BC for some reason, that's before, I think, COVID. So an FA walks into the bar every night, so your habits must be right. He or she looks and squints because they need to focus, sees a dartboard, that's goals, stand on one leg, that's balance, gets high five because they throw the bullseye, the great relationships. Number 6, they gain confidence and they are willing to ask the other person sitting at the bar, and they consistently persistent, and therefore they succeed because they execute and because they know their why. Know your purpose, know your story, know your why, and live that story every day. It takes 2 minutes to tell. Well, the last instance, it's taken me 1 minute to tell. So tell yourself that story. Think of those 10 things. Give yourself a point out of 10. And hopefully this 10 minutes and those 10 things will make you an absolutely successful FA, manager, leader, whatever, and help you raise the bar. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you, Igno. And next up is a panel discussion on practice management and doing things differently. Awesome stuff. So this time it's my pleasure to be able to facilitate this particular session. So really looking forward to it. Warm welcome to all my panelists. We have Werner, Hattingh and Stefan Bothma from Money and Medicine. Juanita Vorster from At That Point with the most gorgeous smile. I watched her down here on the live stream as the intro was playing, like a massive smile. We have Henri here. Henri, awesome to see you. And then Mr. Ian van Schoor from Adviceworx. Ian, warm welcome to you as well.
Thanks, Francois.
Morning,
Good
everyone.
stuff. I'm going to kick off with you, Juanita, because like you and I have had several conversations in the past around, if you talk about practice management, I also talk about building a business, managing the business. I mean, those are two sort of completely different things as well. Building the business is one thing, but also managing it while you're doing it is quite another. But if I really want to build a business that is different and that stands out for the right reasons, because your business can stand out for the wrong ones, where should I start? What is a good solid starting point for me?
Starting by starting and not spending too much time on research and the things that all of the business schools, and I hope we don't have an audience full of business schools directors, because I might just receive them flack afterwards, but not going about it the usual way. When I started in business, I tried to look at everything that was how you're supposed to run a communications agency, how you're supposed to run this, how you're supposed to do this. One, I couldn't find things that made sense for me, and those things I could find just made no sense to me at all. So I've had to resort to doing things in a way that makes sense to me, which turned out to be very much different from the way things are supposed to happen. 10 years on, I still tend to do it. So where you start is by listening to less of the outside and listening more to inside, and following your gut, knowing yourself more than you know your business almost, and then shaping everything you do according to that. And you've told me to keep my answer short, so I'm going to pause there to allow you to carry on with this.
Yeah, cool. I want to ask, maybe to Stefan. If you think about that, what Juanita just said, talking about, and she mentioned it's important to know yourself. Do you also find when you guys started Money and Medicine as a brand and sort of a focus and a niche in your practices, was that an important thing for you? Did you spend a lot of time on actually knowing yourself?
Oh, yes, Francois. I think she also mentioned you got to start by just starting. And I see, Money and Medicine has been a plan for the last 4 or 5 years, but only actually executed 3 years ago when we started. So I think sometimes you just, and I'm not saying you should go in blindly. Obviously, you got to know yourself, do your research, know your strengths, play to those strengths. So we also know between myself and Werner what's our strengths and our dynamics and who's going to focus on what. And I think it makes us a good fit as well. But you just sometimes got to take that leap and take that jump and start with the small things, start with the things that's going to gain traction. Our very first videos and content that we did, sometimes we just look at it and we cringe, obviously, for the right reasons. And we just thought, sure, we can't believe we posted it, but we got a lot of good comments from that. We learned from that. It was an experience. And I think also when we look back, we sometimes think, yes, we've come a long way, and we definitely haven't arrived. We still have some stuff that we're working on, and we still obviously every day just improving as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. And Henri, what if you think about values? This is something that's quite important to you. What role does one's values play, and maybe a bit of a definition of what values actually are? I think for a lot of people, they think about what's right and wrong, and I believe it's not about that. But I'm going to leave that answer to you. So, what role do you feel values play in one, knowing yourself, and then also in building a business that's different?
Yes, I think firstly, values will act as sort of a marker as where you are going and why you are doing something. So I think that's a very effective lens to view if you're doing your mission, vision, and when you're drafting your process. If you don't know what your values are, it feels like you're more like a ball floating in the ocean, going wherever the tide is going or what's hot this week. And whereas you would rather want to be a speedboat and know exactly where you are going. And I think values gives you that marker to pinpoint where you are going, regardless of what's happening around you, to direct all your efforts towards that point.
Absolutely. Ian, I want to ask you sort of a left side question here, or maybe from the side question. I remember way back in the day when you started thinking about Adviceworx and all of that. I mean, you were obviously thinking about building a completely different scale of business, but did that play any role in terms of when you were thinking, because you were thinking very big, right? Many financial advisors are just thinking about just their practice. So do you feel like it depends on the type of business that you want to build?
Francois, a little bit. I mean, so I think each business is different, and you can hear when everybody speaks, it's, they've got their own pieces that they've etched out in their world. I liked what Juanita said. So do things the way it makes sense to me or you, so do it your way. So I think you build for the scale you envisage, Francois. But I think the thematics are the same. I also don't think doing it differently is there's no point in doing stuff differently just because it's different. You've got to differentiate yourself. But I think it comes down to understanding how it makes sense to you. So if you build a scale business or you build a small business, the principles I think are exactly the same, and we're all jostling with the same stuff. It's just different scales. That's all.
Like if we move on a little bit, just if we talk about doing it differently, it almost feels like we want to talk about, the traditional versus the new, almost, or the old versus the new, and I think often we think like we got to come up with something completely different, completely new. But I mean, in today's world, if you think about it, how do we dare to be different, Ian? Like what are the things that we, if you want to be different, what are the things that you must be willing to sort of step out of your comfort zone and be that or do that to sort of gain that differentiation?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't afford to be the same, Francois, to be honest, because then you just run of the mill. So if you're out there, I mean, I think you can't afford not to dare to be different, to be honest. I think South Africa's got to become much more about entrepreneurship, about people being prepared to get out there and do stuff differently. And it comes back to the same stuff every time. You've got to differentiate yourself. You've got to differentiate your proposition. Otherwise, what's the point? There's no point in doing something that's been done 100 times the same way, because then you may as well buy it from a big brand and everybody's fine. So I think you cannot afford not to be different. And that's maybe a slightly just different twist on it.
Yeah. And I mean, Juanita, if I jump to you, do you want to add to that before I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
Go for it.
In terms of doing things differently, when I work with clients in highly compliance-driven, highly risk-driven places, they can't afford to do things differently in terms of the compliance bit. But in business, when you look at it from a practice management point of view, the way you manage your practice, the way you communicate with your people, the way you treat your clients, the way you manage your finances, the values, the ethics of where am I going to go and where am I not going to go, the aspirations, all of those things can be different. Even if from an outside point of view, you have to complete all of the forms, you have to stick to all of the laws, you have to comply with all of the CPD points and so on. The difference comes within the difference in practice management comes for me less than what it is that you are doing that needs to appear to be different, and more on the how you are approaching it according to your values, your ethics, your aspirations, your goals, and your strengths. As the Money and Medicines guy says, know your strengths, know your weaknesses. I always say I've got, strengths, which is really superpowers, and I've got gaps in my personality. Know those and use those to do differently inside the business, even if it doesn't appear different outside.
Yeah, and I mean, Werner, doing it differently, right? So you guys are not doing something traditional in money and medicine in the way that you approach it. How do you feel like, I mean, what are the things that sort of made you go a different route? And then maybe just what are the things that have stood out for you in this journey, like things that you've learned along the way, maybe that it wasn't even part of the thinking in the initial stages when you guys came up with this. I mean, I think Stefan said this has been a a plan that's been in the works for a long time. So yeah, I'm going to leave that to you to sort of, answer that one.
Yeah, so Francois, I think what happened is Stefan and I sat down a couple of years ago and we were planning our year, and we thought to ourselves, but how are we going to create a business where clients actually become advocates for us and where the client actually approaches us to do business? Because we got to a stage where, as new young financial advisors, we were sick of buying appointments, buying leads, just giving them to our call center ladies, trying to set up meetings, get to the meeting, and the client's not really interested. So we got to a stage where we wanted to get the clients approaching us and do business with us. So we identified our ideal client. We both predominantly work with professionals, and we both had a like in terms of dealing with medical doctors. So we said, let's then start to focus and understand the medical profession, what their needs are, what do they want from a financial advisor, and how we can start assisting them. So that's basically how Money in Medicine was born. We then also got to a stage where we did a lot of presentations at government hospitals. A lot of people attended the presentations, but there were always doctors that couldn't attend it because they were probably busy with a patient. And we then said, but let's create a platform where these guys can always access us, where they can listen to what we've got to say at their own time, at their convenience. And that's how we started to do our podcast series. And yeah, it's completely different. It got to a stage where we maybe when dealing with clients over a broad spectrum like we used to. But it's been great. There was also a lot of sacrifice, so we tended to sacrifice some clients as well in terms of missing out on potential deals, potential business that we used to get from those calls and those kind of stuff. I don't know if that answers your question.
And it's great to get some insight into sort of that process. And what I'm also hearing is it was a lot of just problem solving. Look, we have this problem. Here's things we don't like. Here's a problem. Like, how do we solve it? Like, what are the different ways? And I think often back to, if you look at the definition of a mastermind, they say where two minds meet, a third one is created. And I think that's also the power that you have, is like sort of, although you each run your own practice, you're doing this like together as one brand and sort of one set of information and one place for doctors to get the information from. So I think that is really doing it differently. It doesn't even mean that, and I think for me, what's standing out is that it's a different way of getting information to your target client and sort of pulling them into your world versus, financial planning is still financial planning, right? So at the end of the day, yes, there's different conversations. Doctors have different issues and different risks and so forth. But apart from that, underneath the bonnet, it's still the same kind of engine. But how you make it accessible, that's the differentiation. And obviously, the two of you have become experts at working with medical professionals, which is a given. Like, if you want to do that, that's absolutely a given. But Juanita, like, I want to come back to that question I wanted to ask you earlier, is that, because I think one of the things that is sort of missing, or some of the things that we maybe where we go wrong, is that we focus too much on, or we think we're a small business, so we don't think like big business. We don't manage like big business. We just do it wishy-washy because, like, we're small, we don't have the time, we don't have the resources. So my long-winded question here is, how important is it that, or even doesn't matter if you're a one-woman, one-man business, or you're a big business, the way that you manage it, should there be a difference?
The short answer to that question is, unfortunately, there's no such thing as an existing business, or as a lifestyle business, or a maintenance business. You can either sell your business or you can grow your business. In between is eventual closing down. Because even if you keep things the same in your business, whether it be a huge international conglomerate or a one-woman, one-man show, the world around us changes so fast. Economies change, people change, customers churn, all of those things, that even if you do the same things, the world will change, which will mean that the business will eventually have to either adapt or die, to use the cliche. So yes, the amount of man hours you might spend on managing staff, on managing accounts, on managing prospecting, on managing all of these things that you should be doing in a business, in a practice. They might be less in a smaller business, they might be more in a bigger business, but the fundamentals of business, of managing a practice, are all the same across the board, irrespective of size of industry.
Yeah, and does that set you up to be able to scale later on? Because maybe you think like, I just want to build this kind of business. But then I inevitably know, like you get there and then you go like, let's just go, what's beyond this? And then just that one more step. So, I mean, how crucial is it also to do that from early on in order, to make it easier for you to grow that business later on?
Absolutely crucial. You are not your business. Your business is one entity, you are another big entity. And whether it's just you're going to stay as small with a little bit of growth, you should still manage it separately from a SaaS point of view, from a mental health point of view, from a quality of life point of view. You cannot be your business. So the sooner you start writing yourself out of your business and getting processes and so on flowing so that the business is separate from you, the better you're setting yourself up for either scaling in future or just perhaps going to Hermanus and not checking emails for the full 2 weeks.
Yes. Yeah, Hermanus is too far. I'll have to go to Hartbeespoort. All right, so Henri, I mean, if you think about it from a value proposition point of view, right? How does one then differentiate? Because I think like we all grow up in this profession, industry, whatever we want to call it. You sort of learn the ropes, all go through the same process, the same kind of training. And at some point you get to a point where you feel like, maybe I want to do it this way or that way. And we've all gone there. But from a value proposition point of view, like, I mean, what are some of the things that maybe you and your team is doing to differentiate yourself or, to help you stand out for the right reason and just do things differently?
So I think, what has been a big help in our team is that we try to remove all conflict in our practice that as to who the client is working with. So it doesn't matter who in the practice the client sees. All our processes and systems are built to get the job done as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So we try to remove those barriers so that there's no reason for me not to hand over a client to one of the associates. And similarly, if they need help, they must not cost them anything to ask me for help. And I think by building that, we've been able to reach a much larger group of clients, and we were able to process it a lot quicker. All the transactions that comes in happens a lot quicker. And regardless if I'm there or not, the business should be set up that, I always joke that I would be happy if I'm no longer actually needed in the business. Yeah, but it's difficult to get everyone pulling in the same direction and to line up incentives for everyone, that the goal for everyone is not to only grow individually, but also to grow the business.
Yeah, that's nice. And I mean, that sounds to me like there's not only a value proposition to the client, there's also an internal value proposition within the business, which I think you've done a phenomenal job at, Henri. Then one other thing I want to talk about, Ian, I want to come to you. If you think about managing business or like, I know you like to talk about the business of advice, but if you want to manage that, if you think about data and those kind of things, like I want to get a little bit into that now. Is that important? How does one use that in order to manage a business that does things differently?
Yeah, Francois, thanks, man. I think data's become critical. I mean, so particularly when you get lots and lots of personalities, advisors, you've got to get to facts. So I think probably the biggest investments we're making at the moment in our business are about data and data architecture. So we're talking about practice management. Practice management, you've got to be able to help advisors understand how to build better businesses. So the business of advice, as you mentioned. So the metrics, you need hard metrics. You need algorithms to show you hard metrics. So you've got science and fact. So you show science and fact to advisors and show them where they can improve their business. So almost a business management framework. So, and then if you think about that, if you get a quantitative and qualitative process, for a practice, it becomes absolutely fundamental and critical in the succession of businesses, which I think Juanita was talking about. So if you can systematize businesses, or certainly components of them, without losing their character, where processes, excuse the expression, change people, don't replace them, change people. So if you like, humanize digitalization and statistics off reliable data. You can build a base valuation model where other advisors can look at a practice management statistics and say, hell, man, I want to buy that one, or I don't want to buy that one because his compliance is this, his reviews are this, his advice, etc., etc. So I think the foundation of the kind of full value chain here, Francois, is evolved. It's no longer, and I think, again, Juanita mentioned it, you actually need to build for succession and exit. The rest of the time is just time in the saddle. So the better you build your business and make it a saleable proposition, the more, I suppose, profitably you can attract value from buyers who know what they're buying. So it is a little bit different because you've got to kind of pull the value chains together. It's not just about running the business, it's about running it better for future succession. So data, absolutely the foundation of succession, and valuation models is the way we've done it, Francois.
And just maybe, just very quickly, Ian, like what kind of data, right? Because is it the data in my CRM, or is there other data that we need in order to do this? Or do I just go to my CRM and I put everything in there properly and then that's all I need? Like, what do I need to actually run this properly?
Yeah, I was watching your previous piece or the first session on technology, and it's what you think you know about customers and what you really do know. I can't recall who said it, but absolutely, you've got to know. So the data we're talking about is technology where everything you touch. So it doesn't matter who touches a keyboard. It manifests itself through a data filter and data architecture and lands in a category. So it might be, am I running an efficient operating model? What am I doing around activity? What am I doing around management and pricing? So the better you can analyze what's happening in a practice, that's the data you're after, but you've got to make sense of it. There's no point in just having a data warehouse. You've got to actually segment it and make it meaningful. And it really helps, Francois, if you can build the technology off the keystrokes, because then every single thing falls into a pot, and that pot of data is analyzed, and it'll say, okay, activity, this looks making lots of mistakes. That's just bad activity. You know what I mean? So the more you can analyze what's happening, I think the richer the data, the better the solution, basically.
Yeah. Cool. And now I want to jump to Stefan. Thanks, Ian. Stefan, like if you take what Ian just said, like in a small practice, like, say small practice, I don't think it's going to stay small for very long, but relative, it's still a young practice and that. I mean, are these kind of things that you guys are thinking about? What is sort of core and most important to you at this point, or are you thinking about the data?
Yes, I think it's crucial. It's paramount to have this information at hand while your practice is still relatively small. I think if you're running, and we've seen, I was at the one investment conference one year, and this one gentleman spoke about orders, us being orders. So, we sign up clients and clients and clients, and nobody may touch your clients. And I think when you get to a stage when you've passed, let's say, the 500 or even the 400 mark, it becomes a challenge to start tracking that sort of data afterwards. So I think if you're starting out and you've got a relatively small practice, and it's a little bit easier to start tracking the data will tell you a lot about your practice, how you're growing, which sort of clients is the clients you need to be focusing on. If you really want to differentiate yourself, what is sort of the stuff that is actually really adding value, and it's measurable. So it helps you actually to get to a point where you can say, well, if you want to scale the business, and what is sort of the touching points that you can start adding value to, will be much easier. But to try and tidy it up afterwards is a massive task.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, Juanita, I just quickly want to jump to you as well. You think about all these things, like, I mean, I think you said like a business is either growing or it's moving, what's the right word? It's moving backwards. I don't know if you said it or I read it somewhere or whatever, but I know you and I had the discussion. But if I think about selling my business, is that something that I need to know when I start the business, that the intent is that I've got to sell this business? Or and do I have to sell the business? Can I decide I just want, and the business can die with me? Like, I mean, how important is that, knowing that up front?
So knowing upfront, not necessarily important, but being sure what that core purpose of the business is. When we're talking about purpose, it's not the fluffy stuff, not that I want to change the world or all of these things. In business, when you talk purpose, is about the first thing you need to decide, am I running this business to grow it? Am I running this business to sell it? And that can change at any time. So obviously, when you start it, you might have an idea of, I'm going to build this thing to sell it for X amount. And then you run it a certain way so that you can sell it for X amount after X amount of years. If you don't have any exit plans yet, then you obviously have to run it to grow it. And that might change at any time. And then you say, well, hang on, I've grown it now. Life has changed. I've learned what I've wanted to learn. I've accomplished what I want to accomplish. I want to sell it now. But then you need to start the process of selling that business. Running a business to sell it is a completely different viewpoint, completely different process than running a business to grow it. So whenever you make that decision, and whatever that decision is, make the decision. It's not going to happen to you. You have to make that decision and then run the business, your practice accordingly. If I may, Francois, just taking 5 more seconds, I wanted to make a comment on what Henri was saying, in his business, and he tries to get everyone pulling in the same direction. And that might be one of the hardest things of doing things differently. People are so used to doing things the same way that when you do start to do things differently, especially when you're working with other people, communication is key to ensure that your difference remains a strength and that it doesn't become a hindrance for yourself or for others.
Very valuable. Thank you very much, Juanita. On this sort of note, Werner, I want to jump to you quickly, maybe just as a last point. I've seen way too often that, financial advisors and planners, we all know that, choose, sort of something and then sort of stay in your lane, right? So niche or choose a target client or a profession or whatever it is, and then stick in your lane. But from my experience, people are just too afraid to do that. They're too scared. It feels like, no, but there's I want to help everybody, and you guys have done exactly what we know we should do. And I want to know, why are you guys so confident in this approach?
Yeah, Francois, I think it's been a focus for us to focus specifically on doctors. Like I said, when Stefan and I sat down a couple of years ago, we wanted to create a value proposition for these doctors where they start approaching us to do business with us. It is challenging. There are times that we think that, but shouldn't we still meet with other clients? When we created a brand, we thought to ourselves that if we're going to create this brand and we're going to add it on our email signatures, when we reach out to other clients, are they going to feel excluded? But that was a risk that we were prepared to take. We said that we wanted to create a value proposition like no other for these medical doctors. So we wanted to become the number one resource in terms of education. And in the initial stages, the first, let's call it 18 months, it was very challenging because we needed to study their profession. We needed to know what they are all about, what do we need to focus on, but how can we add more and more value to them? And I think been doing this now for the past 3 to 4 years, it basically exceeded our expectation. It got to a stage where people wanted to have services offered to them outside of financial advice, which is still linked to it to a certain extent. And if I just think about one aspect, a lot of our clients started reaching out to us about tax. So when we started doing their financial plans, tax efficient investments, like using the retirement annuity as an example, was part of the discussion. But when it needed to come to the actual submitting of their tax returns, they still came back to us and said, listen, can you assist us? Now, we are not tax practitioners, so we scaled the business. We approached strategic partners to assist our clients in terms of that, because we didn't want to go back to the client and tell them, sorry, we can't assist you. So we wanted to expand the business from that perspective as well. The other thing that started to happen is when we started to do this specific focus and a very narrow focus just on the medical profession, Igno spoke about it, advisor walking to the bar. I like to refer to it as keep knocking on the door. When we just keep knocking on the door, keeping added value to these doctors, eventually they started to approach us. Eventually more and more medical faculties started to approach us just to keep or to add value to their final year students and to their hospitals. It got to such a stage where we actually turned money in medicine into a business, where the amount of clients that started to approach us just became too much for Stefan and myself to manage, because we only have 24 hours within a day and we still have families that are young. So within this year, this has been a breakthrough year for us. We recruited 8 advisors in money and medicine, where they basically assist us to add value to these clients that start to approach us. And it's phenomenal because we are sitting in a position where we can offer them clients where they don't have to call. The clients actually want to do business with us. And you earlier spoke about a succession plan, and I think it's very similar what we started doing. We started to collect this data because we are a very young business, and we needed to understand what are our success in terms of dealing with these doctors. Because if we don't manage that success and if we don't refer back to it, it doesn't help. We keep just focusing on this narrow market, hoping that we're going to create a brand, but there's no value in it. So yeah, we are keeping track of that data, and I would definitely encourage any advisor out there that ever considered focusing on the niche market to do it. It takes hard work, but it's definitely worth it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Werner. All right, and just like that, we've run out of time. Thank you very much to all my amazing panelists. So we have Werner and Stefan, Henri, Ian, Juanita. Thank you so much for being with me today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the summit. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Stefan.
Bye, everyone.
Cool beans, right? So remember to go and check out the resources tab on the platform as well, and for more information about the sponsors. In our next session, we have Ryan Stramrud talking about pushing past impossible, so can't wait for that one. And so Ryan had no intention of ever becoming an inspirational speaker, nor a mindset coach. He's actually a salesman who runs 2 businesses in Cape Town. His hobby is ultra extreme swimming, and it just shows you the power of story, right? When you do some stuff and you can tell stories about it, it takes your life in a completely different way. But anyway, he's taken him on an incredible journey that has seen him push his own personal boundaries and eventually the boundaries of mankind. He has set the bar a notch higher around the world on a few occasions, last year earning his 3rd Guinness World Record. So not only will you find him in Cape Town, but also in the Guinness Book of World Records. Ryan, just home from speaking at a massive MDRT event in Boston, now travels the world sharing captivating stories of his escapades and helping all to develop and embrace an acute understanding and helping an awareness of the power of all our minds. We only have him for 10 minutes this morning. And in the next session, we will start off with Ryan, and can't wait for that one. But before we do, here's a quick note from our sponsors. Righty, ladies and gents, I'll see you over in the next session. So you can go back to schedule and then click into session 3.